having and bearing sanctions banning us from Europe. We are not Europeans. We have not asked for any inch of Europe, or any square inch of that territory. So, Blair, keep your England and let me keep my Zimbabwe.
Do you consider white Zimbabweans to be Zimbabweans?
Those who are naturalized and have citizenship, yes.
Those who've been living there for years and years and years?
But historically.
Right.
Historically,
the people who've
they
been
have a debt.
Contributing to farming, historically they have a debt to pay.
Yes, the land, they occupied the land illegally. They seized the land from our people.
Look.
And therefore, the process of reform, land reform, involved their having to hand over the land. But we agreed upon this with the British, by the way. Manufacturing and mining are not being...
The farmers I'm talking about. Why is that wonderful farmland, and why are they being...
What are you talking about? We are getting land from them, and that's all. They are not being hounded out of the country. Not at all.
They're being hounded off their land?
Not of their land.
It's not theirs.
Our land.
Even though they bought it? Even though they bought it with the certificates of approval from the government?
But haven't you heard of the Lancaster House discussions and the agreement with the British government? They are British settlers. Originally they have been British settlers. And we agreed at Lancaster House that there would be land reform.
Hello and welcome back again. This conversation, I'm just going to be thinking out loud, having a conversation with myself. So, disclaimer out there, you cannot hold me accountable to the conversation that I'm going to have here, because I'm having it with myself. It's just my thoughts. Okay, a lot has been happening between the two countries in Southern Africa, in Zimbabwe and in South Africa. You know, a lot of expropriation without compensation, compensation without expropriation, expropriation without expropriation. I don't understand anymore what's going on. I've made a couple of videos before. It's only short form. You might struggle to find them somewhere on this channel. They are only short clips. But I was explaining about foreign policy alignment in terms of the ANC aligning with Russia and the DA aligning with the United States of America. And I said on that video, the DA aligns with the United States of America for the protection against the land question. If you go back and watch that video, you will hear I saw it coming. I knew this was how it was going to happen. And on the other video, I even mentioned that I think this is too late for the ANC to try and address the land question in South Africa. This would have been done when the independence was obtained. Now, I'm sure the ANC are not stupid. I'm sure they understand, and they understood, and I hope they understood, and they have a plan B. They knew this is how America was gonna react to this action. The events of the past, in terms of the injustices, in either it's colonialism, whether it's apartheid, whether it's in Zimbabwe or in South Africa. These two countries are interesting because Zimbabwe took back the land and South Africa didn't at the moment. And Zimbabwe now is thinking about compensating the farmer. You ought to ask yourself, with Zimbabwe trying to compensate these farmers when they actually just took the land with no compensation, then does it mean that what they did was wrong? But one thing for sure, if we all sit around a table and have a conversation and have an honest conversation about the events of the past, about the injustice of the past, I'm sure either the perpetrators or us, the victims, we will come to an agreement that what happened was wrong, was incorrect, and it shouldn't have happened, right? We all kind of understand that the differences will start coming when we start having a conversation around how do we address the injustices that still exist today amongst us, and some of them include the land question, right? When we all understand, when we would all agree how the land was taken from the indigenous people of Africa, we will all agree there, but how we ought to address the situation, that's when the the complications are introduced, right? But for me, as a young person, I don't understand. Why do we make it so complicated? I would think if someone took my cattle, and we know you took my cattle and you didn't buy it from me, you took it by any means of which is unjust, I would assume that you all I need is my cattle back from you, right? It's not that complicated, but at the end of the day, here we are. These matters are very complicated. You ought to ask yourself, ZANU-PF government trying to compensate the white farmers in Zimbabwe. It's a question that I don't understand. I don't think they actually believe, or deep inside of them they think they have to compensate. But I think it's just a diplomatic action in trying to resolve the relations between the Westerners and those white farmers in Zimbabwe. Because basically what we can all simply say is because we have failed. We have taken back the land and we failed to do anything productive with it, or we have failed in other forms of development, of developing ourselves, and we have failed to stand on our own, and we realize that, you know what, we have no choice. We have to put our egos aside and just go back and to capitulate and try to reason out with these people and see whether we can be in good books again, so that maybe we can prosper as a country. But it just speaks to us as black people. It speaks to us as Africans, as a continent. Is like, how is it possible that we cannot figure it out for ourselves to the point that we get to the point of capitulating and we get to sacrifice our freedom? This is not the first time this situation like this would have played out. I mean, if you look at the Sahel region, or all the Francophone countries, the previous French colonies, France came up with the same tactic again as well there, and said, because we've done all these things, we've developed A, B, C, D, and E in these countries. So yes, we are giving you your independence back, but you owe us. You ought to pay us. And they came up with the French post-colonial pact, and which has ridiculous conditions. And the leaders of the time, they took it and they accepted and they agreed to it, and they were doing what the pact it asked them, and so many serious compromises, being told who to trade with, where to sell your raw materials, and making France the priority, banking all your foreign reserve currencies with them, with France, things like that. Ridiculous conditions. And leaders of the time did agree to it, until now, until somebody strong as Ibrahim Traore stood up and said, fuck yourself. Whoever you are and whatever you do, I don't care. This is bullshit. Then this is ending now. And that's what it takes. A leader who is radical and strong enough and just stand up and say, you know what, I'm not gonna listen to all these conversations. We are not having a nice conversation around the table, and you trying to tell me that I must compensate you for the wrong that you have done to us. What about you compensating us for what you have done to us? It just speaks to the leadership, the kind of leadership. And also, for example, in Zimbabwe, it was the same thing with the Lancaster House Agreement. Britain promised that they would provide the money to compensate these farmers, but never happened. And Robert Mugabe realized, no, enough is enough. This ought to stop now, and he took action. And I would say our leaders made certain mistakes. During the time of independence, they made certain mistakes and made certain choices. You cannot disrespect these legends. They did so much for us. Our heroes, they did so much for us. But obviously, in my own opinion, they made certain mistakes, right? This is not a judgment upon them, but I believe they made certain mistakes, especially for example, when we talk about unity of Africa. Some leaders like Muammar Gaddafi and Kwame Nkrumah, they knew it was supposed to be done then, because it would have been impossible later on, like where we are today, it's gonna be very, very difficult to unite Africa again and try to make it one state and get rid of these borders and the rest of it. But our leaders decided to not go that route, same as what Nelson Mandela did. It's not that some people would say it's sold out, but I don't believe in those things. Uh, I think they just made a mistake and thought maybe the land question can be addressed later on, but unfortunately they were making a very, very critical mistake that later on is going to be way too difficult, especially with how the world has evolved now. On the topic of unity, uniting together as Africans, it we find ourselves in these situations uh, where we are today, where we cannot execute certain decisions. For example, these addressing these injustices of the past, where America can just stand and say, "You are not doing that because I can sanction you. You are not doing that because I'll punish you." We are punishable. The same thing is happening on the other side with Chinese and with Russia. It's literally the same thing. Russia made a decision to do whatever they wanted to do. Uh, we are not having a conversation whether that is moral or immoral, but they made a decision. America threw everything at them, sanctions. They can criticize them. They can try and freeze their assets, whatever they did. But Russia just didn't listen, to the point where we are today. Russia has to be brought to the table to negotiate. And as you can see, it's gonna probably go more Russia's way than anything else. So, because they are a powerful, significant force in the world, it's not like small African countries. And if you look at it, these countries are massive and huge countries. They are in both of their populations, in both in terms of land mass, they are continents on themselves. If you go to China, it's the same thing. And if you look at the world politics today, with the whatever is going on with China and America, it simply shows you that America is literally saying, no matter what happens on this planet, anybody who tries to get ahead of us, we are going to make sure, by hook or by crook, we stay on top of the game. And what chance does all of us as Africans, as fragmented as we are, we can be able to do anything significant? The chances are zero. I don't want to be negative or pessimistic, but the chances of us as Africa, in our small fragmented corners in Burundi or Malawi or Mozambique, for us to be able to become anything of significance in the world, forget about it. This is gonna take us decades, if not, because already it's been decades when we're still here. And we are still at the bottom of the food chain. So we find ourselves where we are because we are weak as a people in general. We allow certain things to happen to ourselves. We have failed to unite. We have made certain decisions that are not good for the continent before. There's no way Africa is going to be able to stand in front of the United States of America and say, whatever you want, you can sanction us, you can take your aid, you can go, whatever, we don't care. This is what we have decided, and we're gonna do it irregardless. We don't have that power.